Information processing approach, the stage model. Around 1950, the computers came into existence, and this gave the psychologist a metaphor to explain how the human mind functioned. The metaphor helped psychologists explain the different processes the brain engages in, including the attention and perception. It is compared to the input information into the computer and the human memory. It is compared to a computer's storage space. So before going to the details, please remember to subscribe this channel. Please do watch other videos in this channel and share it with students and those who love learning psychology. Thank you. The development of the information processing framework. It has continued through the years and has been broadened. In 1968, Atkinson and Shiffrin, they developed the stage theory model. Stage theory, it is also known as the multi-store model, is a cognitive psychology theory. This theory explains how information is processed and stored in the memory system. According to this model, there are three main stages of memory: the sensory memory, the short-term memory, and the long-term memory. Sensory memory. This is the first stage of memory. Here, the information is briefly stored for a fraction of a second. Soon after, it is perceived through the senses, like seeing, hearing, touching, etc. The sensory memory holds large amount of information for a brief period of time, and it is believed to be responsible for the initial processing of sensory information. In order for something to enter the sensory memory, the individual has to pay attention to it. And this sensory memory, it cannot attend to the every piece of information in the environment. So what it do? It filter out what it seems irrelevant and only sends what it seems important to the next stage. That is the short-term memory. So a filtering happens in the sensory memory stage. The needed information is sent to the short-term memory stage. The information that's most likely to reach the next stage is either interesting or familiar. An example of sensory memory is when you see a bright flash of light, and even after the light disappears, you can still see the image for a brief moment. Another example is when you hear a loud noise and you can still hear the echo of the sound in your mind, even after it has stopped. So, any experience that is immediately perceived through the senses can be considered an example of sensory memory, like the feeling, the texture of a surface, smelling a fragrance, or tasting a flavor. Short-term memory. We have seen that in the sensory memory or the first stage, the information what is deemed important is attended and then transferred to the second stage, that is the short-term memory stage. This stage is also known as working memory. The short-term memory has limited capacity and can only hold information for a short period of time like 20 to 30 seconds. The information is usually held through repetition or rehearsal, which helps to maintain the information in the short-term memory. For example, when you try to remember a phone number that someone has just told you, you hold the information in your mind for a brief period until you can write it down or dial the number. The working memory's capacity is limited, so it can only process a certain number of pieces of information at a time. There are several factors that will impact what and how much information will be processed in working memory. The cognitive load capacity, it varies from person to person and from moment to moment. And this is based on the individual's cognitive abilities and the amount of information being processed and one's ability to focus and pay attention. So, several things that influence the short-term memory. Along with that, the information that is familiar and has often been repeated, it doesn't require much cognitive capacity and it will be easier to process. For example, riding a bike or driving a car, it takes minimal cognitive load if you have performed this task numerous times. Finally, the people will pay more attention to information they believe it is important, so that the information is more likely to be processed. So, the information that is familiar and repeated and the important information, they are easy to process. For example, if a student is preparing for a test, they are more likely to attend to information that will be on the test, and chances are there they forget about the information they don't believe they will be asked about. So this is the short-term memory. The final stage is the long-term memory. If the information is rehearsed enough, it can be transferred to the long-term memory. It has unlimited capacity and can store information for an extended period of time, sometimes for a lifetime. The long-term memory is divided into two main categories. First one is the explicit or the declarative memory and the implicit or the procedural memory. The explicit memory, it involves conscious and intentional recollection of past events and facts. For example, remembering your best friend's phone number when you intentionally try to memorize it, and recalling the name of your elementary school teacher that you intentionally try to remember. These are examples of explicit memory. That is, it involves conscious recollection of the past event. Next is implicit memory. It is the unconscious memory of skills and habits. For example, riding a bike. Even if you have not done it in years, then typing on a keyboard without having to consciously think about where the keys are located. These are examples of implicit memory. That is the unconscious memory of skills and habits. It means that several different types of information are encoded and organized in long-term memory. The declarative information, which is the information that can be discussed such as facts, concepts and ideas and personal experience. Then procedural information. It is the information about how to do something like drive a car or brush your teeth, and imagery, which are mental pictures. So this is long-term memory. Now let's have a quick recap on what we have learned. We have learned the multi-store model or the stage model of Atkinson and Shiffrin. The information from the environment, it first enters the sensory memory, where it is held briefly for few seconds. Then, if the information is attended to, it is then transferred to the short-term memory. There, it is held up for about 20 seconds with active rehearsal. If the information is rehearsed sufficiently or it deemed important, it may then be transferred to the long-term memory. There it is stored for an extended period of time and sometimes for a lifetime. It is important to note that the theory has been revised and refined over the years. Newer models of memory have been proposed to better explain the complex nature of memory processing. So this is all about the stage model of memory. Hope you like this video. Please share and subscribe. Thank you and keep smiling.